walk and if you are outside and you're walking and like your neighbor's grilling burgers, that might influence you to want to have burgers that night. That's more of a communal setting for what we're talking about today. And then of course, society. I think one thing that comes to mind all the time now is the pandemic and how that's obviously going to have influences on our health and our healthful decisions and how that cascades into us individually. Marketing can be part of that. Political policies and taxes are also part of societal influences that impact our health. And a good question to ask, and different people have different answers, but where does social media fit in the midst of all this? And my answer is that it fits in everywhere. So you have yourself that's interacting on the social media, but then you're building and interacting with different relationships. Your community can bring awareness through those platforms, and that ripples out in society as well. So it is a very important model. So we're going to start off by talking about our home environment, and I'm going to immediately jump into nutrition because that is my wheelhouse. So as a graduate assistant for WellCats, I often hear about the home environment and about it being a trigger for unwanted snacking. So to address this common concern, you can try by adding your daily regimen to have more nutrient-dense foods, such as fruits and vegetables, and place them in highly visible locations that are easy to access in your home. So having something that's eye level and in a clear bowl are going to be able to promote more healthful choices. Conversely, more energy dense foods like cookies or ice cream or cakes, if we move them so that they're less visible and maybe in a darker container, we're less inclined to eat them. So just however that aligns with your health goals can be your decision on how you do that. Let's see here. I think of my daughter too. So I have a 2-year-old daughter that's a toddler, and I have to consider her line of vision as well, because I'm assuming that we have some parents or family members here in the conference. So whenever I'm considering eye level regarding my child, I'm not only thinking about what she can see within our pantry, but I have to also consider what she sees whenever she looks up. So I used to have a clear bowl that had candy in it, out of eyesight for me, but whenever she looked up, she could see through the bowl. And every time she'd go into the pantry, she'd ask for candy. So just something to be aware of, that your eye level may be different for different people within your household. We're going to move on to talking about planning. Planning our nutrition can be a great way to move us towards our healthful goals, and they do influence us. Meal prepping and making a menu are two very essential things that can help to influence it, because if you have more of a plan, you're more likely to follow it. And meal planning doesn't have to be this really extravagant thing. Often whenever people talk about meal planning, it seems like it has to be like this whole weekend long event where they make every meal that they only have to reheat throughout the day. And if that works for you, that's great. But just be aware that meal prepping can also be just like simply preparing your vegetables, like peeling and chopping potatoes and setting them in water, and then putting them in your refrigerator so that you can just pull those out whenever it's time to cook throughout the week. And that could save you like 30 minutes prep time, depending on how many vegetables you're preparing. But it could save you time. Next, we're going to talk about the pantry and the fridge. So how we organize our pantry and how we organize our refrigerator can actually decrease our likelihood of contracting foodborne illnesses. Something to always do is whenever you open up a container, or if you cook something and you're going to save it for later, make sure and label and date that so that you're aware of the expiration date within within there. So our fridge organ, yes.
Seems like Teresa has a question for you.
Oh, yes, please.
Teresa, you have your hand up?
Yep, there we go. Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but I did have a quick question on talking about meal prep. You mentioned cutting up your potatoes, sticking them in water, and putting them in the fridge. Eh, How? I mean, you could do that at the beginning of the week and leave them in the water, say for a couple of days.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
and you could do other vegetables like that as well.
Yeah, a lot of our really dense, starchy vegetables like carrots are another example of things that you could do. This is one of my well, I do it throughout the week anyhow, but like I learned about this around Thanksgiving because I'm usually the person that cooks Thanksgiving dinner. So you do all that prep ahead of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, my starchy vegetables, just put them in some water and cover them up, and they're good for about 5 days.
Oh wow. Because I know potatoes generally they'll if you cut them up too early they turn brown. You
Yeah,
know, and it's like so
yeah,
I never want to try to do potatoes until I'm ready to use them.
yeah.
But
The water helps
that's
with
a
that
cool
brown.
idea because I run into that problem of not having, trying to get something to the table in an hour. But I don't, I've done the meal prepping thing before, and my daughter and I did it, and it was kind of fun. And we had a lot of things in the freezer, but then we also got tired of what we had. So,
Yeah.
it's kind of a juggle. How many things do you do, and how much time you spend to do that. So,
Yeah, I think that that's a personal answer for a lot of people. And if you only have like 30 minutes on a Sunday or a Saturday, just do a couple things, dice it up, and then you can offset that throughout the week. I would say it's a
cool.
real trial and error for every person individually, but just knowing that you have those options to kind of keep you and propel you towards more healthful decisions throughout the week is really just what we're trying to get at here.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the question. So we're going to jump into fridge organization because I told you about how that can actually influence our likelihood of having foodborne illnesses. And I think it's often something that's not talked about. So whenever we organize our refrigerator, we want to try and keep all of our ready to eat foods at the top of the refrigerator. And the reason why we're doing that is because one, they're more or less eye level. It's one of the first things you're going to see, but because it's at the top of the refrigerator, it's less likely that contaminants are going to fall on it. So it's okay to just reach in there, grab it, and go. So that's what we're seeing up here. Herbs in the water. I just wanted to throw this in there. Whenever you buy your herbs and they come in those plastic bags, something that you can do with the herbs and water is take your herbs, put them into a container with a little bit of water in the bottom of it, and take that bag and cut it at the bottom so that it creates an umbrella after you put it on top of your herbs. That'll preserve your herbs for longer, and then you put it on top so that you can then use them freshly in as garnishes and stuff on your food. So again, you're not getting those contaminants on there. With the middle of our refrigerator, this is again because visibility is so important. We want to have our nutrient dense foods and things that we want to eat more frequently here in the middle. There, as you can see in this picture, they have some chopped vegetables already in the containers with lids on them to reduce spilling. And things that they're just wanting to eat more frequently. And then whenever you move down here, you have things that you're going to have to cook. So our meats, it's hard to tell, but they're actually in clear bowls. We always want to have them situated on something so that we can prevent leakage into our lower compartments. So those are in that's what's being depicted here. And then these are essentially leftovers, which are labeled so you know how old they are. And then because you're going to have to reheat them, that's why we want to keep them a little bit lower in our refrigerator. Now, below are usually our crisper drawers, which I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of that they are underneath our meats, but it makes sense that they're put there because that's usually where our cold source is primarily coming from in our refrigerator. So with that, we have them in here. You want to predominantly keep them covered so that if there is any leakage, you have your stuff prepared, leakage from up top down. And it's isolated in those boxes because of humidity factors and because it's closer to a cold source. We're going to move on from there. Something that we also often overlook with it is that plants are are beneficial in the home. So all the benefits I'm talking about, I actually pull from Texas A&M Agriculture Life, where they present several different studies. And I do have it linked down here. But they say that adding a few colorful house plants throughout the home has been shown to enhance memory, improve cognition, reduce depression, and alleviate stress. Studies show that people have higher quality of work and better accuracy when they're influenced by a calming natural environment. And that similar effects are even shown whenever you have ornamental, like artificial plants. Being outside in a natural environment can improve memory performance and attention span by as much as 20%. And having flowers around the home and office greatly improves people's moods and can reduce the likelihood of stress-related depression. And because of that, it can give a sense of an improved quality of life. The act of gardening itself is shown to be therapeutic, and it's also physical activity. So you're getting a bit of exercise there. And research also links plants in the environment with accelerated healing and better attention spans and relationships, like interpersonal relationships. Another aspect, whenever we look at a healthful environment in the home, and honestly, you could apply this to your work environment as well, is reducing clutter. And this helps promote productivity. It can reduce stress, distraction, and enhance your sleep by having a clutter-free environment.
Kathleen,
So, yes,
I have a question. It's
sure.
from Stephanie Daniels.
Uh-huh.
And her question is, any suggestions for low light plants?
I'm sorry, low light?
Low light plants.
Low light plants. I have a peace lily, and that one is pretty much indestructible. I am not necessarily the person that's most green thumbed, but I know that whenever you look at low light, like succulent plants can be very beneficial, or like very like low maintenance and not require a lot of light. And ivies are also something that usually are pretty good in low light. Actually, if you go to like a Home Depot or something, and you can there's usually tags inside of plants, and it's like a little paper tag that sticks into it. If you look on the back of it, it'll tell you whether or not they're low light or not. And there's a variety of different ones. So I hope that helped and answered the question. I'm going to keep moving on, but if not, just put it in the chat again and I can try and elaborate more. In the context of removing clutter, when we focus on a healthier home environment, consider how you can reduce the clutter. Clutter-free environments have been associated with reducing the stress that I mentioned earlier, and specifically stress hormone levels. They can promote a sense of happiness and they can boost productivity. Setting aside as little as 10 minutes a day to tidy up spaces can mean big strides in your mental and creative well-being. Research showed that those who described their homes as being restful and talked about the beautiful outdoors showed to be less stressed and report less sad feelings as their day went on compared to those who described their home as cluttered. As I had mentioned earlier, but something that we want to do is prioritize sleep. And then whenever you think about it in an environmental context, you want to have like your sleep environment be more welcoming. So something as simple as making your bed could be something to promote you being able to prioritize your sleep. But what I'm really getting at here is that we should aim to get about 7 to 9 hours of sleep at night. We should aim for consistent wake up times, limit our electronics before bed, and exercising throughout the day can actually help promote a more restful sleep. Research showed that less than 6 hours per night has been shown to have an increased mortality rate of 13% whenever you compare it to people that get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. In the context of absenteeism, work is lost by about 6 days, or about 2.4% higher loss in productivity with people that get under 6 hours of sleep. And it's about 3.7 days or about 1.5% higher productivity loss with people that get 6 to 7 hours of sleep. I found that by 2030, it's projected that we will have approximately 318 to 456 billion dollars of economic loss due to insufficient sleep. It is a often overlooked health concern. So piggybacking off of what I mentioned earlier is that we want to limit media usage. Now, of course, we want to stay informed. I'm not saying don't stay informed, but let's have a few authoritative resources that we can go to, such as governmental agencies like the CDC as an example for there. And we want to avoid, this can help us avoid elevated levels of anxiety, stress, or panic. And using like apps to limit our screen time, or not having as many apps on our phone that send notifications that increase that stress and anxiety level are things to consider. So I know for me personally, I have an Apple phone, and on my Apple phone, they have something in settings that actually is called screen time. And I have set up screen time on specific apps, specifically revolved around social media, that limit my time on there. And then my phone will tell me whenever I've reached that time. So things to consider. We're going to now talk about the environment at work and how that affects our well-being. And of course, we're going to start off with nutrition first. So it's often reported that mindless eating can happen in the workplace. And that's honestly been my personal experience, as I've mentioned that I've had a 15-year career before coming to Texas State. There is research that shows that like different candy dishes will influence our likelihood to eat them and how they are in proximity to us. So if you're someone that has a candy dish on your desk, it'd be more beneficial to possibly move it behind your computer screen so that you don't see it and make eye contact with it consistently, or put it in a drawer, or even better, put it in an like further away, like maybe on a different desk or on a table that's away from you. And it's not so that you don't eat the candy, but it's just so that you make a more conscious decision that that is something that you want instead of mindlessly eating it. Because again, visibility matters. Excuse me. If you're interested in the mindless eating aspect that I just talked about, I actually gave an entire seminar presentation over this back in February, I believe it was. And that's available on our Wellcats YouTube channel, which I have linked in the resources at the end of, I have the YouTube channel linked in our resources at the end of this presentation. But anyway, whenever it regards to nutrition, just as I mentioned in the home, it's important that we plan out what we're gonna eat. So something as simple as knowing what we're bringing for lunch is gonna help have an impact on that. And if you go out to a restaurant, that is totally fine, but maybe go to that restaurant already knowing what it is that you want to eat, and having something and choosing something that is going to align with those health goals that you have. Snacks are often something that people feel that they cannot have throughout the day, but whenever you look at our work environment and our time span of whenever we're eating, it's actually usually beneficial for us to include a snack throughout the day, especially that lunch to dinner time frame. So having something like a snack drawer at your desk that promotes healthful, nutrient dense options can be great strides towards your healthful environment. Something as simple as having a miniature fridge where you have things that like yogurt, like for instance, that you can easily access, and keeps you out of a vending machine buying something that maybe is more energy dense that you do not necessarily want to eat, but you're so hungry that you eat it because it's available. Other examples of some snacks that could be included in your snack drawer or mini fridge are like hummus and veggie sticks or crackers. You could do like yogurts and berries, fresh fruit and like a string cheese, air popped popcorn, nuts, and a personal favorite of mine is trail mix. I love me some trail mix. Something else to consider in the work environment, and something that I know that our nutrition department here at Texas State specifically does, is walking meetings. So walking meetings are great because one, it gets you out and it gets you input in that plant environment, and it changes your stimulus so that you're just getting out of the office for one. It's promoting accountability within the workplace for physical activity and physical movement. And we've already discussed a little bit about what the influence that plants can have in our creativity and our productivity. And it also kind of gives you an endpoint to that meeting so that you know once you've done your walk and you're back at your office, it kind of stops the meeting there. So it can help it not be prolonged. And then something else that we do or that we should consider is having more healthful luncheon options. So it's common that luncheon options whenever we have meetings are like just catering and like pizza is the first example that comes to mind. And while there's nothing wrong with pizza, if it doesn't align with someone's health goals, that they didn't necessarily want pizza, but that's all that's offered, then they're being influenced to eat something that necessarily they didn't want. So, but it was available. So so bringing in more healthful options during those meeting times is something that our well catch champions can help you promote within your departments. So if you're interested in being a well catch champion, reach out to Josh or go to our WellCats page, our internet page, and look into that. And we would be happy to equip you with some tools on how to specifically have more healthful lunches here at Texas State. Something else that we have here at Texas State that you may or may not be aware of is the environmental health, safety, and risk management. This is headed by two very lovely ladies named Mackenzie Mitchell and Catherine Beamer. And I have Catherine quoted here with explaining how our work environment, like specifically whenever we're at a computer, is set up based off of a 6'4" male body type. But our workforce is predominantly women, let alone the height differences that may be there. So obviously there may be some adjustments that need to be done there. Catherine and Mackenzie also said that whenever we're looking at how much time we should be sitting at our desk, we should be looking at movements of 30-minute cycles. So we should like sit for about 20 minutes, stretch for about 2 minutes after that, and then stand for about 8 minutes. And that would be a 30-minute cycle. And you should continue to do that cycle. Micro breaks are allowed of like 30 to 45 seconds of movement. So maybe just getting up and like doing a lap around around the office and then sitting back down. Totally okay. And something else that I wanted to mention is that in addition to that, our WellCats YouTube page, which I have linked here at the bottom for you, and I also have it linked at the end of the presentation, has desk workouts that you can do. And these are fun, quick little movements that you can do in your office. And maybe they just use like a chair, something that you would have readily available. Additionally, within the environmental health, safety, and risk management department they talk about ergonomics, which considers the work environment and how it can be optimized and modified for our well-being and performance. It uses like office equipment strategically to enhance work health and address things such as like our desk posture, air quality, and much more things. There are 4 main risks that are repetition, forceful exertion, awkward postures, and contact stress. And I am not an expert in ergonomics, so I'm not going to step outside of my wheelhouse here. But I do want to let you know that these are things that we want to be aware of that maybe we're repetitively doing and how that may have impacts on our body. And I have linked here, this goes straight to our department's webpage, where you can get free assessments on how ergonomically friendly your setup is. And they actually even have it set up now during the pandemic to where you can do everything virtually and submit a video or pictures to be able to get an assessment for how you can work better at home as well. Things that they do that they may suggest are like standing desks or adjusting your vertical, adjusting your monitors, lumbar support, foot support. Apparently, there is a whole wide world of mouses out there that that depends on what type of repetitive movements you're doing. And they can loan out equipment, but it's only temporary. But they can make recommendations to your department, and you could request more permanent equipment be supplied by your departments. So things to consider there. Now, whenever we look, or I want to dive in and talk about the working from home, because I feel like this is something that has definitely been a new, more common occurrence here since the pandemic started. And I just want to set off the tone of this with this quote, which I just absolutely love. And it's, when you take the time to replenish your spirit, it allows you to serve others from the overflow. You cannot serve from an empty vessel. And that's Eleanor Brown. So whenever we look at working from home, the most current BLS statistics, or Bureau of Labor statistics that are out there, is that 30.89% of employers have increased their telework. And that's on top of the fact that approximately 18% has not changed their pre-existing telework. So there's quite a bit of telework out there. 52% is not offering telework right now. And just side note, our unemployment rate is about 6.2 right now. So it does look like, according to a Harvard study that surveyed employers, that working from home is going to stay. 20% of employers said yes, but it's going to be more like a hybrid model is what they're projecting. So it may be something like working three days at the office and then 2 days at home. So just know that it's probably not going to go anywhere. Whenever we look at food and working from home, a lot of those things that we mentioned earlier are going to apply here as well. But something to consider is that you don't necessarily want to work around or near your kitchen. And if you do, try and have your back faced to like your refrigerating or pantry. And that's just something that's going to help you not promote mindless eating. Or yeah, it's going to help you promote more mindful eating. So if basically your food isn't singing to you whenever you're not hungry. I like to think of it as saying like, come eat me. So you can also plan your snacks, as we mentioned earlier, and I gave some examples there. This is going to help you ensure, one, that you're eating enough, because it seems like whenever we're at home, we forget that we get so wrapped up in our work that maybe we forget to feed ourselves. And that planning our snacks, again, is going to help us have more nutriently dense options. And we should make sure that we're actually eating. We should be scheduling that time into our day and making sure that we're checking in with ourselves throughout the day to see what our hunger levels are. You can meal prep your lunches, even if you're going to be home, or at least have a plan or a strategy of what lunch is going to look like for you. This is going to help you not necessarily ravage the food that you find because you didn't have a plan. And something that I would like to suggest in any instance, whether you're working from home, at home, anytime that food is present, just eat. Let's not have our electronics around us or be distracted. We want to be able to, one, focus on our food and enjoy our food and enjoy the company that may be surrounding us. And then just a little bonus tip is that whenever you're having snacks, like let's say you have a bag of potato chips that you want to eat some potato chips, always plate your snacks. This is a visual cue for you to be able to see what you're eating and what you're planning on eating. And that makes you aware of how much that you are consuming. So if you get a bag of chips and you put it on a plate and you realize that you're going back for seconds and thirds in that plate, it can be a cue to say, well, I'm a little bit hungrier than I thought I was. Maybe I should make a sandwich with these chips. So just a more mindfulness component. Something that we want to make sure that we are balancing is our work-life balance. It's easy for whenever you work from home for it to bleed over into different aspects of our life and like let either work or life completely hijack everything and there not be that balance there. So establishing boundaries is going to be one of the greatest tools to be able to have that work-life balance. This could be as simple as like setting a schedule and sticking to it. And whenever you set a schedule, something that I really like to do and I encourage you to do if you try to set a schedule is giving your tasks beginning and end times. Because if you just list out your tasks throughout the day, I found that you get stuck on that one task and then you don't do anything else throughout the day and then you're scrambling to finishing everything else later. And then something else I would say regarding work-life balance, specifically in these, I don't want to say unprecedented times because it's so overused, but just during this pandemic, just make sure and be open and transparent with people. We're all in this together, and talking to a boss or a colleague or a family member saying that like, hey, I may need help in this aspect isn't necessarily a vulnerability, especially considering the fact that we're all going through this and have different issues or different things that are coming up. It's more of a communication than an excuse. So whenever we look at establishing boundaries whenever we're working from home, consider having a dedicated workspace. Whenever we have a dedicated workspace, it can give us something to be able to leave and turn and like shut that part of our brain off. So it could be as simple as, for me, I turn off a lamp because I'm in an open environment that's in a communal space in my home. But if you have like a room or something, whenever you're done with work, get up, leave, and shut a door. These are things that give you external cues to say, I am done with work and I am activating this aspect of my life. And conversely, you can do that if you're focused more on like the like maybe family aspect or things outside of work. Putting yourself into a work environment can stimulate you to be able to do that productivity that you're needing. We mentioned this a little bit earlier, but turning alerts off of your phone when you're not on working hours or even whenever you're off, just to reduce those stress stimulus. Reinstating your lunch breaks. It's so important to make sure that we're eating throughout the day. Our food gives us energy. And taking time off. Now, I know that many people have had to cancel vacations because of social distancing, or like I work in a hospital in addition to all the other things I do. And we aren't even allowed to take vacations there. So I understand that like vacation can mean different things, but taking time off is still essential. So whether that's giving yourself a weekend off and actually like cutting off that I have a weekend to myself, or whether it's making sure that you're taking time throughout the day to be able to get up, move, and go around outside and prioritize just like stimulus of different environments. These are all things that can help promote those boundaries and that promote our physical and mental well-being. And I do just want to say that whenever we're establishing boundaries, this is very difficult work, even though it sounds easy, like, oh, just do this and no big deal. So health and behavioral changes is something that we actually offer coaching for here at Wellcats. So I provided Josh's email here, and I encourage you to send him an email if it's something that you feel that you would like help with. And I believe that it's Dr. Besner is the person that would be the one to be able to help you adapt and establish boundaries that are more conducive to your specific lifestyle. So this is an example of how to maintain a schedule. This is actually straight from the CDC. But I do want to just like highlight some things. So they do give you time frames of what your schedule could look like, but they're incorporating movement. They're taking care, like focusing on things other than work. You know, we're being technology free. We're having 30 minutes or so movement cycles, and that we're getting fresh air and we're stretching and then we're doing movement cycles again, and we're including self-care. These are all things that are important for us. And I would also like to add, the only thing that I would put into this schedule is that we need to be checking in with our hunger throughout the day. So maybe between our 7 a.m. breakfast and our 12 p.m. noon, we should be looking at around maybe 9 a.m. Are we hungry? And if we're hungry, let's get a snack. And doing the same thing between 12 and 5. That's a really long stretch of time without eating, and it's okay to snack. So check in around 3 o'clock and have a hunger check in. If I'm hungry, I'll eat. If I'm not hungry, I won't. But just being aware of that is essential. So moving on, we're going to talk about the community environment. So recreational facilities are known to promote healthful environments, and it would be great to find local parks and recreational facilities, things that they offer, like maybe hiking or biking trails that additionally promote activity, as well as obviously being in a natural landscape. And then smoke-free environments are often promoted with healthful environments, communal environments. So looking at food in the community, restaurants and fast food are definitely things that surround us. So as mentioned earlier, whenever you have a lot of restaurants and fast foods around you, knowing that you have some go-to options whenever you eat at a specific restaurant will help reduce some of that stress and anxiety, and be able to keep you aligned with those health goals that you had set prior to ever walking into the building or driving through or whatever. Marketing, whether we intend for it to or not, whenever we're driving home, we're driving through so many different stimuluses, and a lot of them could be restaurants. So if you're constantly driving past like your favorite restaurant, you're more inclined to eat it more. So doing something as simple as changing your commute home and avoiding certain restaurants or different stimuli for you is another option to be able to have control in your specific goals while being in a community setting. But I don't want to just talk negatively about restaurants and fast food, because a great thing about it is that we can explore cultural foods, which definitely have healthful components in our lives, and they can expand your experiences and your knowledge of different foods and different food preparation styles. So I also encourage getting out there and trying more culturally different foods, and seeing how you can adapt different recipes and styles into how you cook. Something that I do and that I call in my house are oh no meals. And oh no meals are basically exactly what it sounds like. Oh no, I'm not prepared for dinner tonight. So something that I do is that I always have these certain staples of foods that I have in my house that I know if I didn't defrost meat one night, or I just don't have a plan in general, that I have a go-to quick meal that I can whip up, no problem. And for me, that's usually some frozen shrimp in the freezer, because it can defrost in like 5 minutes under some hot water, a frozen vegetable, and some rice usually. And then I usually make some sort of stir fry. For you, that could be like a bag of chicken voila. It's just being able to have something that you have there that you can turn to, so that it keeps you, one, in your home, and two, it's already premeditated and aligned with those goals that you have. A big way that I've learned how to cook, and like different influences that I have in my food preparation, is through potlucks. As I mentioned earlier, I am a military wife, and if you have any experience with the military, you know that potlucks are everywhere. And this is just something that we can do and that we can use to be able to encourage more healthful eating within ourselves and within our community. I understand that potlucks may be a little difficult right now, given the pandemic, but there are still things that we can do, like recipe swaps, or even like in my community, we have pass the plate, where you will prepare like a meal and you share it with a neighbor, and then you share that with a neighbor, and then it just like keeps going around throughout the neighborhood, and then you just end up getting new recipes, and you just get more exposure, I would say. Plants in the community are also something essential that we should look at. Whenever we look at plants in the community, it's been shown to reduce crime. So people will gather in the parks, and they'll have like more stronger, tight-knit communities usually. And that in itself also increases political activism, because you're wanting to protect the environment that you are gathering in. There's also this thing called an upgrade effect. So if one neighbor on a street has a more aesthetically pleasing landscape, their neighbor is more likely to upgrade their landscape, which then has this cascading effect that can actually overall upgrade your entire community's your community effects. A way to relate this, not to plants that I chuckle at, is that my sister-in-law actually lives on a street that is like nationally known for going all out for Christmas decorations. And she didn't know that whenever she moved in on the street. So whenever she moved in, and everyone started decking out, and they were starting to get the national media coverage for different Christmas lights, she then felt really pressured to be able to put up some Christmas lights, even though she wasn't necessarily planning on doing it. So that sphere of influence made sure that she was participating in that community. Same thing with plants. When we look at plants and like medians of like roadways, they're not only great to look at, but they also show and improve driver satisfaction. They can improve mood. They can reduce likelihood of driving into the medians. And overall, what I got from it was that it reduces road rage. Plants can also promote physical activity. A more active community is a more healthful community. And whenever we have parks and recreations, we're more likely to have special events that are going to host that we're going to host, or we're going to have educational programs. So for instance, in my community, we have a local park, and we host like food trucks every weekend, and that definitely influences my neighborhood. And then we also have like produce trucks that come, and that again influences our neighborhood eating habits. So parks and gardens foster an appreciation for nature that often instills in residents a sense of responsibility for the caring and protection of that environment. So what we were talking about earlier with crime rates as well. The presence of parks in neighborhoods encourages residents to exercise, thus improving a physical state and enabling them to be more feel more fully enjoyable with their lives. And spending time in nature gives people an increased feeling of vitality and increases energy levels and their performance levels because of the likelihood of doing physical activity. So whenever our parks and recreations are also shown to get you more active in your community. So you're more likely to volunteer, attend town hall meetings, and contact officials, which all play into your overall communal wealth, your personal wealth, and well-being. So I know I have been talking, and I've been talking a lot, but this is kind of the instant replay of what we've covered. And that is that healthful landscapes influence us. Our accessibility is key on whether or not we are going to make the healthful decisions. Accessibility is key to making a healthful decision. Whether that be your physical movement, whether that be your media usage, whether that be the way that you consume food. Our environment impacts us, and it impacts us through different layers such as home, work, community, and our society. So something that I like to do with my one-on-one consults is that I like to ask my consults to set a SMART goal. A SMART goal is something that is specific, that it's measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So what I'd like for you to do is think of something that we've discussed about today that really stood out to you and that you would like to adopt into your life. Whatever that is, make sure that you're aligning with the fact that it should be specific, measurable, attainable, and realistic. So an example of what I'm trying to communicate here is like if you like the mention of the local parks. So you could say like, by this Friday, I will have looked up a local park in my area and I will have set a time that I can go to that park and do blank activity. I'm going to go run at this park, or I'm going to go walk my dog at this park. That is going to increase your likelihood of going and doing it. So, excuse me. So I thank you for this time. I hope that it was helpful and an enjoyable presentation for you. I'm going to open up the floor to questions, and whatever you have, something to maybe start us off is maybe telling me what your most favorite tip is. And I also just want to show you, these are the resources, but I'm going to open up the floor now to whatever questions you have.
Feel free to drop your questions in the chat if you'd like, or just go ahead and speak up.
I was wondering, Kelsey, where we can find information for your PAN classes. Those sound really cool.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So our PAN classes, are you part of the Microsoft Teams?
I am.
Wildcats? So I post.
Oh, not that one. Not that one.
Oh, okay. Well, let's figure out how to get you on there. And I post Zoom links constantly, and I'll tell people when our times are.
Should I email you for follow-up on that, Kelsey?
Yeah, that'd be great. My email for anyone that wants it is KDB as in boy 181 at Texas State.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm always open to hearing like any recipes that you would like to hear. I know that most recently I've done like vegetarian pasta primavera. We did jambalaya. I did a shrimp chowder. It's really just it's a fun little group. It's casual.
That sounds great. I would be interested in learning a diabetes-friendly meal. My father recently was diagnosed, and so I'm looking into improving my health and supporting him in improving his own health.
Yeah.
I was wondering, as you know, I am a young professional here at Texas State, so I'm still, as they say, balling on a budget. Do you have any saving money tips? Because it does feel more expensive. I don't know if it's just like the expectation that fast food is so easily accessible, but I do have this mentality that it will be more expensive to eat healthier.
Yeah. So I love that question. And one, I'm going to say, and this is going to sound really generic, but I do genuinely mean it, that maybe meeting with me one-on-one would be a great way to explore this.
Okay.
Reach out to Josh, and he would be the one to set all of that up. But I'm also not going to leave you hanging. So some things that often are conflated, I would say, regarding our healthful choices is like you only can buy organic and you have to buy fresh produce. And that's actually not true. We can incorporate things that are low cost, like frozen vegetables and fruits. We can incorporate canned foods, and those are totally healthful options. There are things that we also want to be aware of. So like decreasing our saturated fat is usually really important to about 10% of our total caloric needs. And that actually usually means reducing our amount of red meats and meats in general. And whenever we reduce the meats, that also is something that's lowering our cost because that's usually one of our big ticket items. So maybe those are just some things to talk like right off the bat there. But I would just stress that like there's not really good and bad foods. They're like treats, and there are things that we're going to visit more often than others. But healthy does not have to be expensive.
My favorite takeaway, which something that I haven't thought about a lot, was just consistent wake up times.
Yeah.
You know, just good for you, just in a routine.
Honestly, I was preaching to the choir on that one. I too need to work on that, but it is such an important thing that keeps us more consistent, and our body, like our circadian rhythm, is going to align more with.
Thanks, Kelsey.
Yeah.
I'd like to share a comment from Barbara. She said, as an FYI, Chartwells is offering some healthy vegetarian options. Everyone in her office is quite impressed with the food and the prices.
Thank you so much for that. That's great information. Well, I am a tips and tricks gal. I love to talk about different things. So if you liked some of the different things that I had mentioned, I would highly suggest attending the PAN classes. I usually blow someone's mind in there with how I cut an onion, along with other things. So just come hang out with me. I like friends.
I have one more question that came in from Jessica, and she's asking, why would vegan be better?
Why would vegan be better?
Yes.
Well, I think that so vegan is more of a lifestyle choice, right? So I wouldn't say that vegan is better than any other diet pattern. It's something that is definitely being promoted more as better. There are aspects that we can look at, like it is reducing the saturated fat content that we're eating because we're not eating those meats. But I would say that vegan isn't better. The things that I like about it is that it promotes more nutrient dense options like fruits and vegetables, obviously, but we can have healthful diets in any context: pescatarian, with meat or without meat, vegetarian, and each one of those are going to have different concerns. So, and those concerns can be highlighted with like one-on-one chats with me or with a registered dietitian. So like whenever you look at vegans, some of their risks that they would have is like B12, iron deficiency, and then we might need to look at like different omega consumptions. So there are things to consider in every aspect. I hope that answers the question. I felt like I was very roundabout on that. I'm sorry.
Kelsey, one last
Jessica gives me private
question.
thanks.
Okay. Go ahead, Kat, and then Patricia will get to what you just found.
Have you tried any of the healthy subscription boxes like HelloFresh or anything? Do you have recommendations for a first-time trier?
That is so funny. I actually tried HelloFresh for the first time this week, and that's my first experience with it. And there are things I like about it, and there are things that I don't like about it. So obviously know that my view is very limited to specifically HelloFresh. But I love the convenience factor, the fact that I can just like crank out some food. You're still going to have competent kitchen skills, so you're still going to be doing a lot of chopping and cutting and things like that. I would say the biggest benefit from it is the fact that your meal is just planned out for you, and that someone already did the shopping for you. Whenever we look at it from a nutritional component, there are things that I don't like about it. So like they were sending me full fat meats whenever I would typically buy like a reduced fat meat. There were some meals where they didn't have vegetables, and vegetables is something very essential that we want. So I bought some like quick bag salads, and I made bag salad, and I had a side salad with the foods that I made. So I definitely would say that there's tweaking that has to be done with those. But overall, like we ate them. They were great. My toddler and my husband loved them. Does that help? Okay, great. And Patricia, I think you said you had found another chat question?
No, Jessica just said thanks after you made your comment regarding if vegan was better. And it seems like the last comment that we have from Barbara is thank you so much. Great presentation with good options for a healthy lifestyle.
Oh, great. Thank you. And I do just want to, this popped into my head, but whenever it comes to like the vegan lifestyle, like I mentioned earlier, reach out to me, and we'll actually reach out to Josh so that he can set you up with me. And if that is something that anyone is wanting to explore or just wanting to look at their diet in general, I'd love to be able to help.
Okay. We are at 1 o'clock. If no one else has any questions, we'll go ahead and wrap this up, and I'll stop the recording. Just a reminder to all the participants, I will be sending the survey to you before the end of the day. we do appreciate your participation and attendance.
I definitely agree with that. Thank you for being here. I worked hard on this presentation. I'm glad I got to share it.